Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for
Spooky, scary, scary, unspun.
Do you like Halloween?
I'm not a big dresser-upper, but I loved it when the kids were younger and trick-or-treating and all that stuff. No more trick-or-treating. I miss that. But I don't like costumes. I don't think you do either, do you? You're not a costume. I think
No.
Not a fan.
Every year we have this conversation, and I reiterate the fact that I worked in bars for long enough that I had to get dressed up each year for the weekend, and I always brought out the worst in people. I don't know. I never liked
cold
it.
This weekend, so we'll see how that works out.
As somebody with a dog who is terrified of fireworks, I always pray for rain. I know.
We don't have fireworks in Vancouver.
Hot take. Oh yeah, right. Oh my gosh. Okay. Hey, ask me what I did this week.
Hey, what'd you do this week, Jody?
George, I'm so glad you asked. I had the opportunity.
Worst segue ever.
I know.
Let's get to it.
The BC Restaurant and Food Services Association, the BCRFA. You know, Ian Tostinson, BCRFA, you would hear him on the air all the time talking about, what restaurants need to make it through COVID and patios and all the discussions around.
He's been a huge champion for so many things over the last several years, not even sometimes related to restaurants. It's like just small business.
And Uber and ride sharing in general. Yeah, but Ian Tostinson has had me. He's had me host the BCRFA Hall of Fame dinner. This will be my 6th year doing it. Oh, granted, there was like a break for COVID. We haven't been there for 3 years or 4 years. And it's always such an awesome event. It happens at the Italian Cultural Center. Imagine 350 to 400 typically, but this year was 430 people in a room. All of them, the movers, the shakers, the chefs, their teams, the suppliers, their teams, the hospitality and service industry, leaders. Like it's quite the room. You look around the room, you're like, oh. I guess for me, it's a little elevated in terms of recognition factor because my significant other is a chef. But it's such a fun event because, George, it's kind of like hosting an event with a room full of politicians because they all don't typically get together and fraternize, I guess. They're usually working it. And so we did 24 inductees. But anyway, I digress. I had the opportunity to meet the Lieutenant Governor, Janet Austin. She was sitting at my table and I got to meet her beforehand. Her security came through. It was quite the deal. Oh my goodness, is this woman ever awesome? Holy.
She is quite great. I've met her a few times, and she's such a nice person.
She was giving me compliments, and I didn't know what to say. I'm often verbose, not tongue-tied, and I was tongue-tied.
She's normal. Yeah. She's like a normal person.
Wow.
She was YWCA, I think, before that, right?
Yeah.
And did amazing work there. Built out their whole building down. Yeah, I think that I've met her a few times, and I think what's interesting is, first of all, I don't think she is apolitical, but I think she is now. And I think her term is up, but there doesn't seem to be any movement to move her along. I haven't heard of them. Usually it's 5 years. They kind of talk about that, but there is so they just keep renewing it. So she seems to be keeping the NDP happy because she was put in there by the Liberals. So now defunct BC Liberals.
Can we talk about them for a little bit too? We could talk about leadership on a number of levels. Where do you want to start?
And the restaurants. We can talk about that.
Oh yeah. Let's do that first. Because that is
man. You were at an event where the pain must have been.
They talked about it. They talked about
an industry that's just continues to being hit. I mean, as a small business owner, things have not recovered. Unless I'm in a vacuum or living in a fantasy world, it's tough out there for small businesses. And as a person who markets small business, I can tell you it's what it's like. And restaurants, for that matter. I have restaurant clients. You know, it's tough out there, and restaurants especially have always had it tough. The margins are so tight. I worked at Pizza Hut and Mr. Mike's when I was younger, and got, you know, was the assistant manager at both of them, and certainly at Pizza Hut, where you count every single piece of every single pepperoni. It's very machine, you know, very, very optimized as far as the way chains work. So I was taught all that stuff, and so you know the math on every single little thing, and so you know the margins too. And
that's Brian's job.
Pizza Hut, margins are good in some restaurants, but not most.
He's the guy that creates the food that fits into those margins, right? Like anybody can make a delicious piece of cornbread, but you want that cornbread to cost you $1 that you sell for $5. You don't want it to cost you $4.50 and then
or whatever,
right? Yeah. And it needs to hold well, and you know, what is it? Does it freeze? Can you make it quickly? Does it use all the ingredients that you already have? Are you bringing in ingredients that you need to use just for that? And what does that cost? And then there's labor, because people are like, how does this salad cost so much? And Brian explains it in detail. But again, like you said, I mean, the margin of profit in restaurants is razor thin, and with the affordability crunch, with the cost of doing business, the property costs, the highest and best use things that have seen longtime restaurants shut down. I mean, Bishop's is gone because the lease was like, we're going to raise it. And he's like, no, you're not. It's not worth it anymore. It's really sad to see. And the big box restaurants take over because the mom and pop shop, the small business, can't do it. It's and not to mention the price of gas. The price of gas affects the price of shipping goods. Now you got climate change. You know, there's a sugar shortage right now. Did you know that?
I have heard that.
Sugar, like, I mean, those are the things that, right.
Or shop. I do the cleaning.
Oh,
Amanda is the magical person who does all the making of food and purchasing of food. And she actually came home with a giant bag of sugar. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? She said it was $14. I'm like, okay. She said, the small bag is $14. I'm like, wow, okay. So like we have a restaurant now in our house because we've got this sugar that's like giant.
The big.
You've seen my home. A big bag of sugar takes up 25% of my home space, so my living space. So
Amanda makes delicious food. I follow along on her food. I've never had the pleasure of coming for dinner yet. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, hint, hint. So yeah, you know, we got to support our local businesses, local restaurants in particular, you know, as we did through the pandemic. And I know we talked a lot about that. I go down to, you know, the small mom and pop place at the end of the street, and I'll go out of my way to buy a gift card and gift it to somebody, and then pump the tires of that place. And, you know, we've got it in order to keep moving forward. Because I think similar to what you were saying about your business, during COVID, when we were all like, oh God, the world is shutting down, we're going to all be. And then it was like, oh, actually, no, things are humming along because the stimulation was still there with SERB and loans and And now the SERB and the loans and everything. Yeah, it's like, yeah, not you, not you, not you. And the cutbacks
they made
are real.
Lots of cash available. Most small businesses, especially restaurants, took advantage of that, because most businesses, I mean, like to bootstrap it, not borrow money if you can avoid it. But that was a crazy time, and most businesses in Canada took that SERB money, especially along with the BDC money, which was made available, $100,000 in loans, and so and now the BDC stuff is always immediately payable, backable, but the SERB stuff was due the end of December, and now they've extended it to 2024. Everybody's excited about that. And Ian Tossinson, you mentioned him, was a big fighter for this. And everybody was excited at first, and then they read the small print, and it was like a 3-month extension into 2024. Right. And then you have to make a decision. A little tip though, for those people who are in this, because I'm dealing with this myself and my clients, and so my accountant, who we talk a lot about this stuff, so the max you probably board would have been 60,000. If you pay it back, before March 31st, you can pay back 40,000, whatever that percentage is, depending on how much you got, but 60 being the max, 40 payback. So $20,000 free cash. But a lot of companies may not be able to do it. So there's two things that are kind of positive about this. One is that when you took that money, you had to take it as revenue, that $20,000. So you now get, if you just accept, I'm not going to get the 20,000 deduction, I'm going to pay back the 60, then you get a tax deduction as a negative revenue stream, but also the interest rate's only 5%. It's fixed, and unlike the bank money. So if you were to borrow money to pay back 40, and so you get the 60, you know, at 8% or 9% or 12% or whatever, you got to do the math on that. And 5% right now, it's pretty nice interest rate. And so you got to do the math on that over 3 years. Is it worth? And I think the government is kind of hoping for this, so that they're kind of, this is their backup plan, is that they're subsidizing the payback process, the fixed 5%. And so as a business owner, just do the math on that. And I don't see them extending it, but you know, they might again, but it'll be close to the deadline if they do it. And I know Ian Tostinson's fighting for this hard, along with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation and other organizations like that are saying, look, you know, restaurants, especially most small businesses who took this, really don't have the cash at all or to pay the monthly amount. If you, over 3 years, $60,000, that's a lot of money every month to pay. That's a salary. That's one person's salary every month for 3 years. So it's going to hurt in March for sure.
Yeah. Do your due diligence on what the plan is. I want to talk a little bit about AirBNB, because that was a big story last week with the provincial government sort of shoehorning in and saying, hey, municipalities aren't managing this enough or whatever. So, you know, it's not moving the meter. Status quo is not working, is basically how I interpreted the announcement on this. But it has ruffled the conservative side of the political spectrum in saying, hey, get your hands off my property, literally, like, because you have to actually host in your primary residence in order to have an Airbnb now. And it's got to be, you know, you can't, I know people that were renting places, moved out of their rental, and then Airbnb'd their last 2 rental places, unbeknownst to their landlords. Like they were running hotels. And they were, but some argue, and certainly John Rustad, the BC Conservative leader, is coming out hardline right now saying, you know, the provincial government should have no say in the matter. It should be all on municipalities, which of course we know municipalities can put all kinds of rules on stuff, but don't have the people to enforce it. And, you know, it's like, what will work here? What will work to help solve the problem? We don't have enough hotel rooms, that's for sure. So
another thing that Ian Sostens is always arguing for, saying people come here and eat, and they stay at restaurants, or they stay at hotels. If we don't have any hotels, they don't eat at restaurants. Yeah, it's a problem. It's more of a political problem. And John Rustad from the BC Conservatives, I will put it out there that he's fighting a losing battle politically on this, because believe me, I fought this battle. His argument is about land control. I also argued that when I was there. Also, this insipid, you know, neighbor looking at your neighbors and spying on each other.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
But most importantly, what I always argued, and Vancouver is the perfect example of how this policy does not work. We've had the strictest Airbnb laws in Vancouver, in the country, if not North America, for now since 2017. And guess what happened? And the sell job on this was, we need more affordable homes. Too many homes are being used for Airbnb, and that's why we're unaffordable. I mean, it's such BS. It doesn't, the two are not connected. There's maybe a teeny connection. The challenge, of course, as we know, is not about Airbnb. It's about how fast we build things, how things we get approved, the cost of construction, staff, blah, 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 blah. And you know, we're not building enough homes. We've had this discussion so many times. But from a PR point of view, for a politician, you can't, I've tried, believe me, I tried the last couple of weeks on Twitter to explain this. And you just don't get any pickup on understanding the concept that this ability to spin this Airbnb as a solution to affordability is such an impossible argument to win, to say it's not the solution. And control of Airbnbs has nothing to do with it. It's all just about control. Not to mention, when you start creating government restraint and control of things, let's look at taxi licenses. How did that work out for government when they started putting licensing on? Guess what? The taxi licenses went to $1 million at its peak. You know, these kinds of things, when the government gets involved in any kind of private sector operations, it just means things are going to get more expensive and more black market and more you know, messy and bureaucratic. It doesn't fix the problem. The sell job on this was affordability. It's not solving that problem. What is going to solve that problem? More places to live and more hotels. Simple.
Okay, so I have a little bit of a different POV than you do, not surprisingly for our listener or viewer. But I acknowledge what all of the things you're saying, because I just don't look at this move with Airbnb being one that's going to solve anything. I look at it as, and I think I said it when I was bringing in the topic, is that the status quo is not working. Something's got to change. And there's no question that some of the affordable rental market is being eaten up by Airbnb or short-term rentals, VRBO, whatever. We use Airbnb as sort of a catch-all, but short-term rentals, flipping it. And you know what, frankly, more and more I hear about people who list on Airbnb, and then people reach out and they're like, hey, let's not go through Airbnb, side deal, cash deal. It'll be this, no fees, da-da-da. So there's a black market to the non-governmental thing as well. There are people that are abusing the system. Now, on the other end of that, I think there are people that are absolutely using it for all the right reasons. There's the people who have, converted their garage in a place that's not appropriate for long-term rentals, but could be for short-term rental, use a portion of their house that they can sort of ebb and flow, use it sometimes, and then, wouldn't otherwise rent it out long-term. But there, this move is sort of a heavy-handed. So I'm not saying that I 100% agree with that this is going to work. But maybe it'll hit some of the loophole jumpers and the people that are like the person that I referenced, that I don't reference by name, but she literally has probably 7 places, none of which she owns, that she runs like a hotel, that otherwise would be places for UBC students to live, or hospital employees to live, or what have you. And I don't know the answer to that. Certainly building, we've talked about it so often. Building is definitely the answer. We need to build places, but you say it takes 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. We don't have that long. We're growing by leaps and bounds. People are coming in. People are fleeing their part of the world for whatever reason, whether it be climate or war or whatever. And we're welcoming them to this country, and we have no place for people to live. And that's a problem. So got to start somewhere. That's my middle. Got to start somewhere.
I'd say we also are a massive tourist destination, and we have nowhere for people to stay. So
but there are some 1 second, because there are some caveats to the provincial thing, right? It's not, you can never do it. You can do it during some surge times, like when FIFA's happening, or so going back to that zone idea, because we don't have the hotels, let's identify places where, like Whistler and Squamish and Gulf Islands and add to that zones where you're like, you know what, if you want to invest in an Airbnb, buy into this building and have at her. You know what I mean? Like, don't they do that in other jurisdictions?
Less government is better government. And
well, I mean, okay, so blanket statement.
Okay. I've given you the math on it. We've proven that it doesn't work. It's just a good
But
PR
we haven't proven
spin.
that this won't work. That's not true. This is not proven to have not worked to try and limit short-term rentals. It is not proven to work.
In Vancouver. We have
There's been no short-term rentals here, George. What are you talking about? I just told you about my friend who has 7 properties.
Where are they located? Where are they located?
In Metro Vancouver, Kelowna, and South Van.
Right.
Or south of the Fraser.
Yeah.
So Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, Kelowna.
Tourist destinations.
White Rock's a tourist destination?
Sure.
So what isn't a tourist destination?
I don't want to offend any neighborhoods. But there are lots. There are lots.
Okay, let's move on. We're going to agree to disagree on this one. Let's talk about Translink, because that is also an absolute shit show.
Just the math on the again, we've talked about this a lot, though. Let's agree that government needs to focus on building more of the 99% of the homes, or whatever the number is, that people live in and want to own or rent. Let's get more of those built, right? We both agree on that. Like, get more things built.
But that's you've said that by the time you buy the property and you start the permitting process, you're 5 years away from building something. And then after you get all the permitting in 5 years, you're 2 years away from once the crane goes up. So, okay, something else has got to give, because our kids don't have places to stay, or they could just live with us forever. That's okay too.
Yeah, that's right.
Translink. Going broke, apparently.
Well, I don't know about that. Yeah, they're having financial. I think the COVID. There's another example where they just haven't come back to the numbers that they had pre-COVID, or the projections that they were hoping to get. They're closer
Kevin
than most.
Quinn said they were back. Yeah,
What's
Kevin
that?
Quinn. What I heard on
Yeah, it's
his clip.
95%.
He said, no, we're pretty much back. We're not taking enough money in to continue to support what we have and grow it. We're going to have to cut back. Can you imagine, with all of we're taking away parking, we're taking away lanes. Everybody should take transit. Everybody needs to get on a bus or a train. Everybody needs to take transit. Oh, but we can't afford it. So we're going to remove a bunch of routes.
Yeah, that's where government should be involved. When this is an example of, when I worked at CBC, the intent of CBC was to ensure that there was broadcasting to every corner of the country, right? The intention of a railway across the country.
Yeah.
We need to get the country together. It's no different with this. Transit is not something that private sector is going to build on its own. It needs government involved. It's just not one of those things. Certainly, I believe in private-public partnerships. Canada Line is a perfect example of that. Came under budget, and it's more successful than any other ones. And the company who built it gets to reap the rewards in partnership with Translink. The thing is that I find interesting, and I don't like this tone, to be honest, from Translink, because it's obviously a political move to try and get more money from the government. But Translink has a very, very good cash flow. Very good cash flow. Very predictable, barring COVID.
Right.
Generally, we know they're making a lot of cash is coming in every month. It's very predictable. And as an operation, as a corporation, that's very good to get money, to borrow money, to figure out how you can build and how you can operate. And it gives you a lot of flexibility. And I don't think anybody's asking for Translink to be profitable. So it's interesting when you take a business model and try to put it into an organization that's not a business. It is a business. It should be trying to be break even. Yeah. But you have to also think about its overall good for what it's doing. And I think any government, the NDP have been not so great at infrastructure. They haven't announced anything really since they got elected. Oh, I guess the bridge in New Westminster, maybe that's one. But there's no big infrastructure. What's happening to UBC line? I mean, we're almost, the boring machine's almost reached its end there. So I guess that's not happening. Why are we not hearing announcements? For big infrastructure? What about the tunnel in Richmond? What more studies? You drew.
I saw one thing. I saw a press release on that. Actually, something's moving forward there, but I don't pay attention to it anymore because I don't believe it. And I think that's something that governments really enjoy. It's you throw enough spaghetti at the wall, and you can insert whatever you want for spaghetti there. You throw enough at the wall and people start going, yeah, whatever. Because the spin is real. Like, as you just said, the average Joe public is going to say, how can Translink be crying poor when they're building so much? Look at the boring machine over here. Nobody's looking
Capital
at
expense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Capital versus operating. So they're operating
to the average Joe person, to the average Joe public person, they're like, okay, yeah, whatever. That's just an excuse to raise the rates again. You're just going to raise the rates. It's all going to be more expensive for everybody, period. But I think some of the concern is that the taxes taken from the fuel tax, is being eaten into by the number of electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles that are starting to hit. And that is only going to increase. So then we're going to be looking at tax on our electricity in a different way, right? Like we're naive very to think here. Right now I'm very much enjoying the hybrids in my driveway because we drive right by the gas station. But eventually they're coming for me.
All of us, if it's electricity, because we all use it. And we're a very lucky region when it comes to electrical costs, but hydro and our water power systems have provided us very, very reasonable. You go to anywhere else, the UK or wherever, where people close doors in rooms and turn lights out whenever they leave.
What?
I know, right?
They turn lights out when they're not in the room.
Right? They turn heat off. They have every room has a heater, and they turn it off and close the door. And it's very something that we don't have to do.
We did growing up. And in my single family or single parent environment, early days, oh boy, it still makes me crazy when Brian will be going in and out the door on a day like today when it's really chilly outside. I'm like, close the door, heat the neighborhood. heat in the neighborhood.
Could come back.
My mom was all about
But
it.
your point of the electric car thing is an interesting one, because there is a big subsidy right now for buying electric cars. I think $6,000 to $8,000 per electric car. That's great.
Fully electric, just to be clear.
Fully electric, yeah.
Not a
so I'm not
hybrid.
sure, yeah, there's nowhere to plug them in, so
No.
whatever. But
actually, you know what? I had a friend of mine say this to me just this past week. She had a Tesla and she took it back. She took it back. She had too much anxiety around charging the vehicle and not being able to go the distance she wanted to because she wasn't sure that she could charge up. So she got a hybrid and now she enjoys it. It's like, okay, gas when I need it and electricity when, I can.
If it's your only car,
routine.
I would say, don't get an electric at this point, especially if you are not really close, or you don't have a charger in your building or home, or you don't have close access to the big superchargers.
Yeah.
But it's,
we run a cord across
I just
the
think
sidewalk.
that the challenge with the Translink and the power costs and infrastructure costs is, you got to make brave decisions, and I don't see a lot of that happening these days. Big decisions are not being made. And you can blame COVID for a little bit longer, but eventually we're going to need, pavement politics. We need some big things announced, and we need those kinds of things done, especially as we head into a recession or are in a recession. If you ask restaurants, we need stuff. This is where government should get involved, but they've all, federal government certainly maxed out. It's we're seeing that right now, a lot of angst federally because of the debt, which caused inflation. Provincially, though, we're not as bad off. And so we have more flexibility for the province to be making big announcements. But quite often the province needs the federal government as a partner. And if you can't get the federal government in a partner, you got to do private-public partnerships, which the NDP are opposed to. So that's not happening.
No. Okay, we got to wrap up pretty quickly, but I want to just touch on some of the things that are happening in the United States because they are so big. Obviously, we could talk about the Middle East. We could talk about the mass shooting rampage in Maine. We're not going to go there. Let's talk about the spin around the appointment of Mike Johnson as the Speaker of the House after all the drama. Every pundit has said you can't get farther right than this guy. He is like the guy who built the argument that the election was stolen. It is unbelievably dangerous.
He was Jim Jordan's second-hand man. He was second in command.
Second in command
of Stop the Counter, or whatever the hell was
Stop the Steal.
Stop the Steal. Yeah, it's so bizarre what happened behind the scenes there with those guys. But whatever they did, whatever he sold them. His fact that he's so unknown, there were some jokes by other people say, I had to Google this person. They're his colleagues. They didn't even know who he was. And yet they voted for him unanimously. Not one vote against. And he is an major anti-abortion, super religious, pro-gun, given what's been going on this week in Maine. This is a guy
wants gay sex to be criminalized. Not just anti-LGBTQ2+, but wants gay sex to be criminalized. It's unbelievable that is a reality. Second in line to the Oval.
Lawmakers. These are the lawmakers in America.
Second in line to the Oval. Second in line to the presidency of the United States is this guy.
Behind the vice.
Second, actually, because the president is not in line. He's the president. Second is first is Kamala Harris, and second is the Speaker of the House. So that's just terrifying. Listening to Rachel Maddow talk about it is like, what? Oh my God. Because I've been flipping channels. I'm like, okay, here's what CBC says. Here's what CNN says. Here's what MSNBC says. And then I went over to the guy that replaced Tucker Carlson. Do you ever watch that? Crazy. Do you watch that guy? Jesse Waters?
Sure. Yes.
Oh my God. Okay. So the speaker is happy. The vote is happening with speaker. Mike Johnson gets put in. There's like a shooter on the loose. There's a war in Gaza. And do you want to know what Jesse Waters was talking about?
What?
Survivor. He was talking about how people on Survivor this season are asking to go home, which is true, which is really weird. More than half of the people that have gone so far on Survivor, because Brian and I watch it, have said, please vote me out. I want to go home. I miss my bed. So they interviewed a former Survivor member. Jesse Waters interviewed him. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, am I being punked? Like, this is a news outlet.
If I was Ukraine right now, I'd be worried though.
Right. Good point.
The funding for them might be in danger. This is a Trump guy. Trump totally would have been there with Putin. It would not have pushed back, I don't think, on Ukraine the way we've seen. You know, it's going to be an interesting year. 1 year from now, pretty much exactly. We'll have an old president or a new president or a new old president. But who knows what will happen with Congress and the Senate. But
yeah, the good news about the House being as crazy as it is right now is that anything that they come up with has to go to the Senate, which is Democrat slim majority, and then it goes to the president from there. So there's no like fast and loose at this point. The issue is a year from now, if either of them, or if Trump is the nominee, who knows, given his legal woes right now, but the speaker is the one who drops the gavel and certifies the election, right? So, America, what are we doing? And do you think Donald Trump should have been given a $10,000 fine for defying the gag order?
Of course. I mean,
this week,
it's going to be 100,000 next time. It's going to be 100,000 next time. She, the judge definitely alluded to that, and then it'll be jail time after that. So, but he doesn't give. He every time he gets something, he just gets more popular. And this is the dilemma they have in America. This is the position they've been put in. Now he's got his buddy in the Congress, so he's got that under control. And we'll see how they manage to negotiate, because the fact that the Congress and Senate and the president, the three leadership people of those three organizations, really do all the decision making. That nothing happens really on the floor of the Congress or so much. It's all just, everything happens in the 11th hour, these budgets. It's a crazy system down there.
It's a crazy
The British parliamentary system is so much better.
It's so much better.
So much.
Even though we fight with our speaker. Will. Okay, so when you want to find George and all of his amazing tweets, and the more controversial he gets, the more powerful he gets, George_Affleck. George _Affleck. On Twitter. You staying on Twitter? You like it? You're going to continue?
Oh, yeah. Excellent.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I even pay the extra so I can do really long X's, whatever the hell they're called.
How much does that cost? Not that I'm ever going to pay for
$100 a year.
Yeah.
That's good. I like it.
I got all the streaming services instead. I'll let people bring me content for money instead of providing it to them for money. Pay to give content. I love your TikTok though. I always mention the TikTok because Curve Communications TikTok is so great though, but your persona is so funny. You can find me on Instagram and on Twitter at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y, at Jody Vance, unspunpodcast.com. Tell your friends to tune in to listen to George and I argue. See you later, George.
See you next week. Bye.